Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Hello, Emil.
Hey.
It's great to be in Miami. I will say I came in from San Francisco, and everything they say might be true.
Yeah.
It's a lot more energy here, so I'm thrilled to be here. We've spent a lot of time, we as media, society, everything, has talked a lot about what was wrong with Uber. So let's start on a different tack, and you and I have discussed it a lot. Be interesting for this audience to hear what was right with Uber, one of the fastest growing companies of all time.
I always felt that the best thing about Uber was the sheer ambition of the project, right? So today, you have ride sharing available to 6 billion out of 8 billion people in the world. And when we started, that number was 0. And people are like, oh, you're breaking the rules, you're bending the rules, you're going to places that haven't welcomed you. And we thought of it in a lot of ways as sort of a business civil disobedience. Like, people want this, it's a good product and good service, it's safer, it gives people options. And so we were gonna go until we got stopped. And that ambition has led to, today it's a $60 billion company. It's in food delivery, grocery delivery, 92
Put that
countries.
in perspective, $60 billion company, because probably to many people here that sounds very, very large. What could it have been?
Well, I mean, if you've seen me on TV talking about it, I feel like Uber could have been one of the great FANG sort of size companies, multiple hundreds of billions of dollars, because if you think about the areas it was playing in, transportation, food, delivery, hot and grocery, the amount of income that people spend as a percentage of their income, it's like 50% of human income is spent on those things. So it could have been huge. It just, when we stopped running it, it became a little bit more like Verizon and less like a company that was innovating constantly.
So would you have done anything differently?
A lot of things differently. I think, and this for all the entrepreneurs in the audience, when you get lucky enough and good enough to find a product that's going to be a noun, a verb, that's got product market fit, like globally, that everyone wants, and you get on this hyper growth path, and everyone wants to give you money to have you invest in that growth. You kind of feel like the insurgent still. You're a tribe, and then all of a sudden your service is everywhere, and everyone's talking about you, and you're the man. You're not the insurgent anymore. And I think when you become the man,
on top.
Yeah, you're on top. People look at you, and it's really just darts they want to throw. And you have to actually turn how you speak to the world a little bit.
Darts they want to throw. Were some of those justified, though?
For sure.
And how important is that culture? When you're building a company from the ground up, and all of a sudden you're not the incumbent anymore, but you're dominating the space, and you've got not just customers, but you've got regulators and lawmakers looking to you.
Yeah. I don't think you can build an important company without being tribal early on, because the tribal the camaraderie, that we're in it together, we're putting everything at stake. It's really hard. You're facing obstacles all the time, whether it's financial or regulatory or what have you, or getting the right talent team together. And it's very hard to do that without a lot of trust, a lot of energy, and a lot of commitment.
Right.
And so then you take that and you try to expand that because you want to hire more and more people like that. Then your company gets big, and all of a sudden it's all over the world, and it's a little harder to control.
Right. So the practices may have to change, and some of the checks and balances.
Yeah.
You mentioned a word, hypergrowth. It feels like that was the word of the last decade. And I think we're still trying to figure out what the word is of this decade, but it doesn't feel necessarily like hypergrowth, or at least the environment is different. Low interest rates, a lot of money sloshing around. Now, investors are looking for more profitable growth. Do you think that Uber, and maybe even the gig economy at large, could be built at this time with interest rates where they are and where markets where they are?
Probably not as fast, but we should have. But if I were there and this whole era started now, I'd be still trying to push the envelope, because in certain market segments where they're winner take all, and rideshare is winner take all, right? The more cars you have in the city, the lower your wait times, the lower the fares, the more the drivers make, that flywheel. So if you were slow and the other guy or gal were fast, you'd end up being the Lyft, not the Uber, of that marketplace. So if you want to be the Uber and not the Lyft, you have to be running as fast. Now, the money may not be as available, so instead of launching in Kenya and Kentucky and 4 places at the same time, and maybe I'm doing 2 or 3, but you've got to, I think hyperscale still has relevance, but the business model has to support it.
And there's a word for that, blitzscaling,
Yeah.
right? Again, it feels like a last decade word. And how do you grow a company then? So it's less ambitious, focus more on the core. Would Uber still have food delivery? Would it have freight? Would it have all these other sort of properties that you talk about being involved in everyone's daily life? Could you do that, or would it be sort of a more narrow company?
Gosh, I hope you can. I mean, it's, I think some of the great companies in the world have been built starting with a core product and quickly, with Amazon did with AWS when Windows had Office, and then they started with Xbox, and these multi-product companies end up becoming the dominant companies in the tech landscape. So I hope they're not in an era where you have to stay narrow. Yeah. And remember, I will say this, Uber was started in 2009 in the darkest of times, and we started blitzscaling in 2013 when we found product market fit and the money came available. Yeah. So I think the money's going to, some money will come back. We're not going to be in this constrained environment forever.
And probably for the right companies.
For the right companies.
And I think you're seeing that already. It's funny because I covered, Uber was the first company I covered when I got to San Francisco as a tech correspondent. I saw this evolution. I saw the ups and the downs. And it's interesting where it is now. You mentioned Lyft. They've been able to effectively compete against Lyft, but is that more about what the new CEO, not new anymore, Dara Khosrowshahi has done, or is that more about what Lyft hasn't done?
I think it's the latter. It's this ambition. So Uber and Lyft started about 2009. Uber started with black cars, if people remember it. It was the high end, I'm going on a date, I'm going to a business meeting, and then they did the fun cars, right? The Toyota Camrys that were just for like normal every day, which was UberX. And today that category of rides is like 90% of the whole business. And so they started before us. So what's the difference between these two companies? Ambition. Like one's in one country with one service, one's in 90 countries with 3 services, $60 billion versus $3 billion, a 20x difference.
Right.
And so I do think ambition, leadership, and execution sort of made up that difference.
Now, no offense to you, but the Lyft guys were always known as the nice guys.
Yeah. They were.
You and Travis, who sort of led the company, built the company, were more controversial, we'll leave it at that. But you were really sort of these wartime CEOs in an industry that was disrupting a lot out there. A lot of people were looking to you guys and either liked what you were doing or really didn't like what you were doing. What lessons did you learn about being a wartime CEO that you think are relevant right now when a lot of entrepreneurs and founders are dealing with an environment where there's less capital available, more profitability wanted, really a wartime era?
Yeah. I think the thing people didn't like about our approach at Uber was we were in peacetime and we were acting like wartime. And Travis and I both had 2 companies before. This was our 3rd gig each, and we were like, the only way to win is wartime. We sort of like never understood what winning in peacetime was because we'd never done it. And so we were acting that way, and people were like, hey, this is calm down, everything's good in the world. You don't need to be that aggressive. But now today, if you're not a wartime leader or CEO, and you have a company that hasn't gotten product market fit, or that has and needs more money and that has ambition, you have to be in wartime. And now those same behaviors, which is like, let's get politics out of the workplace, let's focus on the mission at hand, let's take quinoa out of the free lunch program, and all the perks that you get, and like let's slim down to what we need as opposed to what we want. You can't survive. So for us, it was sort of doing let's assume we can't survive tomorrow unless we do good today, 10 years ago.
What are some of the ways, you talked about some of the soft ways you can be a wartime CEO, take out the quinoa, kombucha, all that good stuff. Financially, because you were really the deals guy, how does it change how you run your business, how you look for deals, how you're spending money investing in the company during a tougher environment?
Yes, there's some key differences. So I remember one experiment we ran at Uber because we were short of drivers. That was always a problem in the business. We need more drivers. We had too much demand, not enough supply. So we send a bunch of people to gas stations and we'll say, hey, if you sign up to be a driver now, we're going to fill your tank of gas. And so we'd go spend tens of thousands of dollars hiring, 100 drivers, and they'd be like, thanks for the gas, buddy, and keep going. So we're like, maybe that'll work, maybe not. And we took so many risks to try every angle possible. You might be a little more circumspect about the things you try before you spend money.
Right.
Yeah.
But I guess that whole idea of trying it, getting your hands dirty, see what you can scale after that. Very rare, we're at Founders Fund event, venture capital firm, and Uber took a lot of money from a lot of different people, a lot of different funds. What lessons did you learn about who to take money from, how to manage that cap table?
I mean, I think we learned the hardest lesson of almost any company around.
And to be clear, Founders Fund never invested in Uber, right?
They didn't. They invested in Lyft, actually, ironically.
Where are they?
But I will say that
only facts here.
if I could have swapped out Founders Fund for benchmark capital,
I wasn't going to go there.
I would have go back in time and made that trade. I think Lyft would be a lot smaller and Uber would be a lot bigger than it was today, just because of the approach that companies like Founders Fund and there's others, Andreessen Horowitz, have, where they've run companies. Keith run companies. Dalen is running a company now. Peter Tierman, they all run companies, so they have the empathy for how hard it is, and then how special it is when you catch on to something big, and how the goal is not to just get it to the next level. The goal is to keep going until it can't go anymore. There's a different philosophy at some other VC firms where if you put $33 million in Uber and that was worth $10 billion 4 years later, and there's 5 partners dividing up that money, so $700 million each, they start to go, whoa, let me protect that $700 million. I don't care about the thing growing by 2 or 3x there. So it's a totally different mentality.
Were there any red flags early on that you could sort of tell this audience what to look for? What questions to ask? Maybe do you poll other founders? Is it a better network now as well that you can talk about who? Yeah. And also, do you go to the biggest check? I'm thinking you're saying no based on your experience, but there is that sort of desire maybe to go to the biggest check because you can scale.
There was a time in the Valley where there was a lot smaller number of venture capitalists and a lot smaller dollars that were available. So you went up and down Sand Hill Road to Sequoia, to Founders Fund, to Costa, Kleiner Perkins. That number has exploded. So each of them have a different business model. So you do have more freedom now to shop a little bit if you have a great company. But yes, the words of wisdom are, I think Founders Fund in their charter has something like they don't go against the founder. They'd rather the company sort of, in their portfolio not do well rather than go after the founder, because when the founder does well, the companies overall do well. So I ask those questions all the time now, and I get a lot of call from entrepreneurs who are asking, hey, I got this term sheet or that. How do I think, and what questions do I ask particular to that firm? So I'm more giving firm advice.
Right.
Some firms will never stab you. Some will stab you in the front. Some will stab you in the back. Some will be your best partner and will be critical in your growth. And you gotta, each one of those are different questions.
Did you ever hear that anecdote from John McKay of Whole Foods? Anyone hear how he described VC? He also sort of had not a great experience and maybe went with a firm that wasn't so focused on the founder. He said it was like picking up a hitchhiker on the road. You say, where do you want to go? Okay, I'm going to get you there. But then the hitchhiker wants to go somewhere else, so they kick you out of the car and leave you rolling down. And that was his anecdote. And I think the last, really years of easy money, the founder has been in a position to be selective. The era that we're going into, when maybe there's not as many dollars, not as much capital available, what should they know?
That's very true, I think. But there's also some good news side of that a lot of bad ideas that were getting funded during the bubble eras are not getting funded. And great people are not splitting out into, I'm building a restaurant in the metaverse, give me 20 million, right? So those ideas will go away, and therefore the money will be concentrated on companies with good ideas and entrepreneurs with good ideas. And frankly, the talent, we had great talent doing ideas. You're like, I can't explain what this is, and I'm like, am I crazy or are they crazy?
Right.
We're in the era of like, no, we weren't crazy. We were just in a time where money was going anyway. So I think concentrated dollars and talent will make some companies really thrive in this era.
Let me ask the opposite question as well. What can a good VC, the right VC, do for your business that is trying to scale, trying to grow?
I mean, if you're in a consumer business, the experience that these VCs have in operating a business like that, PayPal, you talk about the PayPal mafia. Why is the PayPal mafia important? Or why will the Uber mafia be important to operational logistics companies? It's because they have a whole network of understanding of how to build this stuff, people who want to contribute and maybe even you hire. So them helping you build from the ground up, it's not quite an incubation, but it's surrounding you with talent so you can skip all the mistakes that you don't have to make now because they brought the knowledge and the talent with them.
Right. So Uber obviously began in the Bay Area on the other side of the country. You're living in Miami now. Where do you think is a better place to build a company at this moment?
I mean, here because...
And it doesn't have to be either of those.
Right.
And you don't have to say Miami because you're here.
I want as many companies to build here as possible, so I'm going to say here. But I will say that
smiling.
I think the things the mayor's focused on, who I think is speaking here today, and those of us who want to be boosters in Miami are focused on are making sure we have more and more engineering talent, so that the engineers can come together. And so our engineers often come up with their own ideas, and they spin out of companies like Microsoft to build OpenAI. We need enough of that motion here to continue, spitting out companies that start here and can build here, not only on the executive side and the financing side, but on the engineering side too.